Hey, welcome back to the Brett Bailey Show. This podcast is for millennial and Gen Z men who want to live, love, and give before they die. Thank you so much for your support and your desire to grow. Let's dive in. Ladies and gents, welcome back to the Brett Bailey Show. Thank you for tuning in today. We got an awesome guest. If you are into breathwork, if you are into hearing crazy stories about people's past, unorthodox past, this is the episode for you. Jeff Sorenson, our amazing guest, is the founder of Breath Army, a movement that really began in, well, if you asked him, he'd probably say it started long before he got to Canada again. However, right now it's really set up in the west coast of Canada, all across BC. He hosts amazing breathwork events and breathwork facilitator trainings, and he's totally transformed his life. This man has had run-ins with the law down in Mexico. He has seen some of the darkest of human nature, and now he helps people bring the light out of themselves. Bring the light to the darkness that they have within so that we all may benefit, so that this entire world's vibration may be increased. And it sounds super high and mighty, but this man is very grounded. He's not full of ego. He just really, truly wants to serve, and you can feel it. So for any of you that want to learn more about breath, hear about how to transform your mindset and ultimately live a better life, this podcast is for you. So without further ado, we're going to dive in. But before we do, if there's any men out there that know that they're in a place in their life where they need to let go of an energy-draining habit or addiction, and they want to get hyper-focused and really have that level of focus and discipline consistently, not just for a month or a couple months, but consistently, and they want to start living their purpose, really living a life they're made for, then I invite you to check out some of my content and coaching services. You can click something in the description during this podcast after. If you're really in a place in your life where that's what you know you need, would love to serve you. It's such a privilege to be able to bring amazing guests like Jeff, to bring amazing insights and coaching to all of you. We're all growing together, and it's beautiful to be a brother on the path with you. So with that, let's get on with the show. If any of you guys here are driving right now, invitation to pause the podcast at certain moments throughout so you can take a breath and really take in a nugget. Or if you're at home and you're not driving, invitation to bring out your journal, get a pen and paper out and take some notes. You know, if you're going to spend this time consuming this information, use these little ways of pausing, recalling information, writing things down to help you get more, retain more from this episode. Thank you very much. Great to have you here, and let's dive in.
That's fair. Yes, I see that, yes.
In terms of forgiveness, I think about it in a similar way, in that I need to put myself in the shoes of the person that I'm looking at and blaming or judging. And I need to look at the entirety of their experience and what they've lived through, and recognize, again, if I had lived through everything they had lived through, I would have done the same thing.
Right.
And, you know, there was a certain point, and we kind of touched on this from your perspective before we started recording, but there was a moment in my own journey where I recognized that the people that had come in and had really deeply hurt me or betrayed me, and those were the people that actually I'm most grateful for now, because they taught me the most, and they were my masters, they were my teachers. And I could also recognize that if we were to believe that we were to come here and have prior knowledge of the life that we were going to live before we lived it, and we were to sign up to come in and live a life where we were going to deeply hurt the ones that we loved most deeply in our lives, that would be an incredibly brave soul.
Wow, I never thought of it that way.
And so we need to have a lot of gratitude for these people because they've come in as our teachers. And yet, I believe that collectively right now, we're shifting from having our masters of fear and pain and suffering to being able to learn from love being our teacher and love being our guide. And I think that that's the collective shift that we're in right now.
Yeah, I feel that very deeply, and it's I feel an emotion right now and a drive to really get that through to the listener, because it's not just like being guided by love. Someone's just gonna, oh great, the fuck does that mean? You know, like how do I do that? Or whatever else. And I want to just highlight this before we move on, that being guided by love is an experiential like calling. It's like a pull, not a push. And so what I want to leave you guys with listening is, I invite you to open up your mind to the idea that you're being guided, you're being guided by things, and love can be one of those things you could bring into your life that it's a totally different paradigm than the one that we were taught. It's a whole new thing. It's like, you can't describe a mango to me, motherfucker. All right, that's it. Describe a mango to me. You have to actually taste a mango to understand. And I want to open you guys up to the idea that there could be a whole other beautiful way of being, of living, of experiencing reality that you haven't yet tasted. And there's probably a lot of realities that I haven't yet tasted that are awesome, that I haven't just tasted yet. And so, I just want to open you guys up so you don't have to be close. But moving back to the breath here. Life is difficult. There are times that are difficult for us to feel, to make sense of. We don't know what to do. I found breath could be a huge help for these situations. Mm-hmm. How have you used breath to help you get through some of the challenges of life? And how can somebody else, if they're going through a challenge, use breath to get through what they're going through?
Mm-hmm. All right. So I think life can be difficult. And I think that we can choose to make life difficult.
Yes.
I think the breath is a tool that we can utilize to make life a whole lot easier. Mm-hmm. And to be able to navigate through life in a completely different way than what we've known. And I often describe breath as an anchor. And so the breath I think of as this anchor, and it's something that we can hold on to.
Yeah.
Right? And so if we're in really wavy conditions, stormy conditions, it's like the breath is something that we can grab onto. And it doesn't matter what's happening in our life. It doesn't matter what's happening around us. We always have access to this incredible power that can shift not only the way that we feel within a given situation, but the way that we respond to it. And so, in short, it changes everything.
Yes, it really does.
And to have that conscious awareness of it, and that you have access to that power, and that nobody can take that away from you. Wherever we go, whatever we do, we always have that with us. And so it doesn't matter where we're at in our life. We can come back to the breath, and we can come back to the breath. We can find a sense of ease and acceptance with what's going on in any given moment. And then we can choose. The breath gives us choice because it creates space in between what's happening and our response. And so in that choice, in that space, comes a great power. A power to choose to move forward in a different way than everything we've known in the past. And so I think there's many different facets of breath work that we can look at. And a lot of people know these big breathing experiences and conscious connected breathing experiences, or Wim Hof breathing. And that's great, and I love them, and they have a place. But to me, the real superpower comes in the moment-to-moment unfolding of our life, and being able to unravel the patterns of our past as they unfold in real time, and to intercept those patterns and choose differently. To me, that's where the real power is.
Yes, and by the way, guys, that means, do you want to earn more money? Do you want to attract a relationship? Because there's things that you can do within yourself to make those outcomes more likely. And I think breath, people kind of just put it to the side sometimes, or a lot of this meditation work, but they don't realize that they're making decisions every day that are taking them away from being in a loving relationship. They're taking them away from financial freedom. And when you can stop and breathe when the moment comes up, you can make a new choice. You know, and I think to me that's important to note with breath.
Yeah, if I could say something about that, I think, regardless of what we're hoping to attract in our life, if it's like you're wanting to attract a relationship, if you're wanting to attract more money, it's not an esoteric concept. It's energetics, right? And energy and vibration are everything. And so it really, nervous system regulation, the energetic system of our body becomes the point at which we determine what we're attracting. Because if we're in a contracted fear response, like this is, again, it's not esoteric, this is biology.
Yes.
If we're in a fear response, we're in that energy of fear.
Yes.
Right? And if we can find a way to soften, to relax, and to be fully accepting of any moment that we're in, fully at peace, then that completely changes the energetics of our body.
Yes.
That's when we start to attract what we want, right? When we're in fear, we're pushing it away, right? It's like, you spoke earlier and you said really well, living in love is a pulling to us, not this pushing and driving, right? And it's in a similar way, it's like that fear response is a survival response, to push or to pull and grab and, like try and take what we need. And it's like that being in love, being in trust, being at peace, being that master of our nervous system allows us to attract and to pull in what we want.
I totally agree with that, and I'd love to get into some tactics on how to do that. One thing that blew my mind as I began to study the breath was I realized that every psychological, physiological, emotional pattern has a breathing pattern associated with it.
Mm-hmm.
When I realized that, I was like, oh shit, my emotions can be affected by my breath. My thought patterns are affected by my breath. Even my physiology, like, it's affected directly by my breath. I was like, holy cow, this is like a secret superpower, and it's accessible right now. So what are some of the breathing patterns that you found that help a man achieve a state of being that we could call one, relaxation, and then one more that's like a powerful state, more of a, like, I'm gonna take on this day, motherfucker. Let's go.
Yeah, I start everything with something before breath, and that's awareness. And I think that anybody looking to be able to utilize any of these tools needs to think about that even before we think about trying to change our energy. It's like, well, where is our energy at right now? And how am I feeling? What am I feeling in any given moment? Because, I'll often use the analogy, well, if we don't know where we're starting from, how are we ever going to get to where we want to go? So to me, the foundation of awareness is paramount.
Yes.
To being able to get where we want to go.
Yes.
So taking time to get good at learning about how you feel. And it sounds kind of dumb. It's like, well, what do you mean? It's like, what it means is everything you do coming back to the body and noticing what you're feeling in your body. Getting good at being able to identify, am I in a fight or flight response? Am I in an activated state in my nervous system? Or am I relaxed? And again, that sounds simple, but how many people actually do it?
Yes.
Right? And it's a moment to moment thing that we do all day long. Right? It should be the most important thing that we do.
Yes.
Is determining where we're at. And if we want to attract the life of our dreams, then we want to be doing that as much as possible. Is shifting our state into that receptive state where we're pulling in what we want as opposed to pushing everything away.
Yes.
And really trying to grab and scratch and pull. So to me, that's one of the most important pieces. In terms of relaxing, well, it's easy. It's relaxing the breath. It's softening the breath. It's slowing the breath down. Right? It's smoothing the breath out. If we want to create more peace or more calm in our mind, then we calm the breath. Right? So again, it comes back to awareness. Well, how are you breathing right now? right? And if we're breathing and our breath is chaotic and it's rapid and it's shallow in our chest, then that's going to be reflected in everything else in our body, as well as our mind, as well as our emotions. And so if we want to create more calm, if we want to create more peace, then very simply, we just do that with our breath, and it's not rocket science.
Yes. Yeah. It's not rocket science at all, honestly.
Yeah.
As is many of the great teachings in my experience.
Totally.
They're ridiculously simple. I think it's why we miss them.
So a good practice for that.
Yes, please.
Is I'll often encourage people to find their own cadence, right? So cadence breath is a counted breath in and out. And for this one, it's an even cadence. So it's an even breath in and an even breath out.
Like 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out.
So we could do this really quick if
Let's
you want to
do it.
do it.
Please, yes.
Right. So in finding cadence, I would encourage somebody to start out at, for you, we could start out at 4-4.
Cool.
And what I'm going to do is I'm going to count one round of 4 seconds in and 4 seconds out. And then the next round is going to be 5 and 5, and then 6 and 6 and 7 and 7 and 8 and 8 until we get to either 10 and 10, or you get to a point where you can't maintain a smooth, soft, gentle breath in and out.
Okay, let's rock and roll. And if anyone listening at home wants to try this and you're not driving, recommend.
For sure. And if you are listening along, the point is that at some point in between 4-4 and 10-10, that you're probably going to get to a point where you can't maintain that smooth, soft, gentle breath in and out. And that is the point. So just remember that number, and then we'll come back to why that's
Okay. All right, here we go.
All right. So we're going to start with an exhalation. So exhale, and then breathe in, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4. In, 2, 3, 4, 5, out, 2, 3, 4, 5. In, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. In, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. In, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We're going to cut it off there. So for you, good cadence would be 7-7.
7-7. Cool.
So you get
I feel
to that.
super high right now, by the way.
So we want to find that point where we either pop and we can't keep going and we take a deep gasping breath in. I'm able to watch you and observe you, so I was able to see that point where you start to kind of lose that soft, gentle breath, and you're starting to hold either at the top or the bottom a little
Yes.
bit. And so for you, it's 7-7. And so we take a little bit of time, maybe first thing in the morning or last thing at night before we go to bed, and we breathe with a 7-second in and a 7-second out cadence.
First thing in the morning and last thing before bed.
Right. And get to know what that feels like in your body. And then cadence breathing is a great technique because you can do it whatever you're doing. You can do it when you're out walking.
Yeah.
You can do it when you're driving because there's no breath holding. Don't do any breath holding
Do
when you're
not
driving.
do breath holding while you drive, everybody.
But you can do a soft cadence breath, right? And
Yeah.
so it's a technique that I would say transcends a formal practice and becomes what I call a lifestyle technique. So it's something that we actually bring into our life. And through our awareness practice, if we find that we're in a situation where we can feel that we're stressed out, we're activated in our nervous system, and we need to calm down, then we come back to that cadence breath. And our body remembers that. If we have a practice of it, it's like, oh yeah, okay, here we are doing this thing, and I always feel calm when I do this 7-7 cadence, right? So the body just falls into that. And very quickly, we feel really relaxed.
Yes.
So that's a great practice for relaxing and for having a tool that's accessible all day long, every
Anytime.
day, wherever you are.
Yeah.
So simple.
Yes, it's so simple and actually extremely powerful. Like extremely powerful.
People so underestimate how powerful a technique like that can be. And they're like, like somebody listening right now might be like, well, how much can that actually change how I'm going to feel? It changes everything.
Like, yeah, it's not even like an overstatement. It literally, it impacts every part of your experience. And for me, I was reflecting on my 2022, my last year and the start of the year, and I was thinking about what decisions did I make that got me results I didn't want, what caused that I didn't want, and what caused things I did like. And I realized that one of the things, the most important shift that I made was my awareness of my breath. Mm-hmm. It changed so much for me. Mm-hmm. And just simply, like, I do it unconsciously almost now, regulate my breath. Sometimes I just start breathing more, because like what you said, you just made it click for me. My body started to recognize that this is actually a really nice, relaxing thing. Similarly, when we smoke weed or do a different drug, the body's like, oh wow, this is good.
Familiar place.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah, super powerful. And like you said, it becomes our default pattern of being, and so it becomes an unconscious behavior. And breathing is a behavior, and that's something that people don't understand.
Right.
It's a behavior.
Viewing it as a behavior.
Pardon me?
Like viewing it as a behavior.
Yeah.
Yes.
It is a behavior that we adapt over time in order to cope with the different experiences of our life. But when we're removed from stressful or overwhelming experiences, our breath doesn't automatically go back to normal.
Yes.
So we need to train it, and we need to bring it back to normal. We need to guide it back to normal.
Okay. There's so many questions I want to ask. Let's go to the power breath, and then let's come back, because I'd like to know some of the common breathing patterns you see in traumatized people that you've worked with, and understanding some of that. But let's quickly give a breath for feeling powerful and strong. And a lot of men are listening. They want to feel manly.
I think like one of my favorite techniques in terms of an actual formal practice is, of course, Wim Hof breathing.
Yeah, for sure.
I've been a facilitator for years. I love that practice. It's one of my go-to practices. And also I feel like in this context, we're like something really quick, something really simple that people can do to energize. One of my favorites is 3 breaths in through the nose and a soft breath out through the mouth. So we could do this together.
Let's do a few, sure.
So it's
1 second. Okay.
3 breaths in through the nose, soft breath out through the mouth, looks like this. And that will activate somebody very quickly.
Yes. Did you notice we started going a bit faster as we were doing? Does that happen to you when you're not doing it with somebody?
Yeah.
Okay, because for me it felt like a competition in some ways. Not like I was competing against you, but I just felt like it felt like we were going faster and faster and faster together.
I tend to do that, and it's a technique that I'll teach, and as I teach it, it's something that I ramp it up as we go along. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, that was fun. It was exciting. It felt like a build-up, which makes me also remember what you said before about awareness being the most important part of the breath, where if that created a psychological shift of excitement, anticipation, going a bit faster. And I'm just thinking about if I was thinking about some problem with somebody I know in my life, if my attention was elsewhere, then now my awareness is now my experience is going to be different now of that breath, just because of what I'm focusing on.
Exactly, and we can think about the breath as a tool to interrupt undesirable states of being. And so there's been scientific study done on people that have experienced severe depression, and breath work has been determined to be as or more effective than electroshock therapy in breaking people out of depressive thought patterns. Right? So what we just did is interrupting the thought patterns, because many other processes in the body are observing the breath, right? They're observing the breath to identify how to respond to what's going on. So again, if the breath is kind of chaotic and all over the place, then that's what the rest of the body does. If we're locked in a pattern of thinking or like a negativity, we want to break that up. And so we can do that by those short breaths in, and interrupting the breath pattern. And then we come back to a soft, gentle breath, and all of a sudden everything feels different.
Yes. Yes. It's incredible.
Super powerful.
Yeah. Have you gotten into Dan Brulé's work much?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I love Dan. I love listening to him. I love reading him. I love to meet him. He seems like an awesome dude. But I remember him talking about, it was in his book or it was in a podcast I was listening to, I can't remember, but he was talking about, there was this one breath that he found that, like, it's impossible to be depressed when you do this breath. Mm-hmm. Do you know any breaths like that?
I would say the one that we just did is pretty
difficult.
Pretty effective in
Yes.
terms of shifting people out of a depressive pattern.
Yes.
Any kind of forceful inhalation where we're really taking a deep full breath in, anything where we're sighing out through the mouth is going to be super helpful for just getting us out of any kind of habitual patterns that we're finding ourselves in. And of course, depression is just being locked in this certain pathway within our brain and just kind of like going over and over and over like a broken record and not being able to get out of that groove.
Yes. And let's talk about some ways to get out of that groove.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a big believer in accessing the right hemisphere of the brain, which is not what a lot of psychotherapy does. They work mainly with the left hemisphere. And I found that early in my coaching career, that's basically what I was doing, was basically left hemisphere work with a little bit of state change and things of that nature using the body, but it was mainly left hemisphere. The results I was getting my clients dramatically improved when I started working with breathwork and practices that could go deeper into the emotional brain and start to bring up some trauma so that it may be healed, and work with some of these past memories in a very conscious way to change those grooves you were talking about. So what are some of the ways that we can begin to change a person's psychology on an emotional level, give them an experience they won't forget, a positive PTSD,
Cold water.
Cold water, eh?
Absolutely.
I was hoping you wouldn't say that.
I think that's one of the, from my perspective, what I see right now is we're locked in some really strong habitual ways of perceiving the world. And we've come to a point where those patterns are so strong that we actually are willing to do things that are really uncomfortable because the pain of staying in those patterns has become so uncomfortable.
Yes.
That it's actually worth doing something uncomfortable.
Yes.
In order to break out of that pattern, because we simply can't go on in those patterns anymore. And so the way I see it is that we need really strong medicine right now to help us break out of where we're at.
Yeah.
And so that's why breath work is such a powerful tool to be able to interrupt those patterns. Cold exposure would arguably be my favorite one because it's so potent and it's so quick and it's such a dramatic shift. And so to go out and get in cold water changes, and it's just an immediate shock into presence and shock into feeling our body. And for those of us who are living up here in our brain, we need to get into our body. And when we connect to our body, then I think that's freedom, right? Because we're living in the body, we're aware of the body, we're able to influence what we're feeling. And so to me, cold water is the best way to just snap out of what we're experiencing, and the chemical benefits of the way that it supports brain health and emotional health it's so dramatic that hands down one of my favorite practices.
Yes. And funny enough, I was surprised to hear you say that initially, but as you started explaining it, it began to make more and more sense to me of why it's so, like, it's 2 minutes is potent,
Mm-hmm.
and you can actually make some pretty radical shifts with that. And it's something you can do at your own house, you know.
Totally. It's so accessible, provided, like people listening in Canada, most of us have access to cold water. People,
Yes.
Living in other parts of the world, we can access the cold.
Yes.
But even just being able to access a cold shower, profound shift. My favorite is to
Yes.
get immersed in cold water.
Yes.
But if we don't have that option, then cold shower is a good second bet.
Yes, which definitely for everyone who wants to get into it, I would say be cautious, especially if you're doing stuff in like a lake or something like that. Like, be safe and research it a bit. But a cold shower anybody can do.
Totally.
You know.
For sure, immersion in a natural body of water is something that really needs to be respected. And my favorite quote to summarize that is from Wim, and it is that cold is merciless, and it is
Yes.
merciless, and it is dangerous, and cold will kill you.
Yes.
And I think it's kind of easy to forget that, but definitely if people are going in a natural body of water, then it's certainly best to go with somebody and
Yes.
to go about it in a way that we're emphasizing caution and safety, as opposed to trying to push ourselves, especially when we're new to the practice.
Yes.
Because by definition, if you're being drawn to that practice because you're so stuck in your head that you can't feel your body, then you don't know what the fuck is going on in your body.
Yes, you can't see those danger signals come up.
Totally. And as we develop our practice and get more connected to our body, then we can intercept and we can identify things as they arise. But when we're new to the practice, we really don't know what's going on.
Yes.
And so it's super important to be careful.
Yes, and and by the way, I didn't tell you this story, but 2 weeks ago, I did that and ended up in the hospital.
Oh, really?
Yeah, in Kelowna, yeah, because I went way too long and with this group, and it was my first time in a natural. I think it was my first time in a natural body of water, and it was colder that day than usual, and I literally passed out, not in the water, thank God, but and it scared the shit out of me, and my physical heart was hurting, and I have never had that, my physical heart hurting, and that made me give me an experiential thing, like, whoa, like the breath, it needs to be very respected, especially for someone who is like I'm a guy who's pretty familiar with this stuff too, you know. And for someone who's never done it before, if they went out by themselves or something, like, woo, I'm gonna try the ice thing, like, you can get fucked. For sure. You know, so I'm glad we touched on that. I'll tell you the story after this. But I want to dive into we were just going somewhere. I want to dive into healing the emotional brain. You know, the reason I love your work and what you do is because I'm noticing that your work is primarily about giving people experiences. And, you know, Joe Dispenza says experience enriches the brain. And experience is something that can shake that snow globe of depression, that same pattern. It can shake things up. And so there's a new opportunity for a new choice. So what are some of the experiences that you take people through that you found to be the most potent to help them process unprocessed emotions, forgive, let go of past pain, that sort of area? What are some of the most potent experiences you found that have helped your clients make those big emotional shifts on a deep level?
Well, we've already touched on two of my favorite ones, which are breath and cold.
Yes.
But I would include any stressor in along with cold. So heat can be a great stressor. Yes. Fasting can be a great stressor.
Yes.
You know, even time in nature is a powerful way to really get in touch with ourselves. Just spending periods of time by ourselves in nature, that's a great tool. You know, and I have a personal belief around this, which is based in experience, that we can really heal the emotions by reconnecting to nature. And when I first came through my drug addiction and started to get clean, I was living in Mazatlan, and I was living in this area called Punta Cerritos, which is this really rocky point that went out into the ocean. And so these big waves would come in and crash against the rocks, and then they'd pull back out and they'd leave all these eddies of swirling water. And I would just spend hours a day just sitting there and just watching the water. And I felt like that was just like reharmonizing the energy of my body and just like helping me to process the emotions and just come back into some kind of a balance, like an internal balance.
That's
So
powerful.
I think it's so underrated as to how powerful a tool that can be. Psychedelics are another one of my favorites for sure in terms of deep healing, and again something that needs to be deeply respected and taken in the right context. And of course I'm not encouraging anybody to take psychedelics, but in my experiences those have been incredibly powerful healing experiences in my own life, and as well as other people that I've worked with.
Yeah. I mean, one thing else that I'm aware that you do is dance.
Yes.
And like free flow movement.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna do some of that tonight.
Are we gonna do some of that tonight? Fantastic. I've been needing to dance, man. I do some dancing and singing in my life, just when I can daily and stuff. But a proper context, a proper set and setting to do some dancing. So I didn't know that. I'm fired up now. But I found that dance has been dancing and singing. I'm gonna add singing as well. I wouldn't call myself a very good singer. I'm not, and that's okay. But good in the sense of like it sounds sweet, but it feels amazing, and that's why I do it. It feels so good, and I kid you not, it is. There's one time I was driving to go pick up some weed from the store because I wanted to change my state, and I sang and danced on the way, and I was like, I don't even need this, and I just drove away. And that's an example of what dancing and singing does to me. It helps me relax. It helps me feel like myself. It makes me feel confident. It makes me feel connected to myself. It makes me feel very free. And I also believe that it can be something that helps someone heal a trauma around specifically self-expression or being seen.
Absolutely.
What do you find is the power in free flow movement?
There's so much there. It's such a powerful modality to, as you just said, have that freedom of expression and to feel the confidence to be able to express that in front of other people.
Yes.
And I think there's another really important piece that is important to touch on for your audience in specific, because I'm guessing that this audience is predominantly men.
Yes.
And I think in men's work that there's something that I've seen, and again something that we're going to talk about tonight, is that there can be a tendency to kind of hyper focus on fixing the masculine, right? And that's only half of it, right? Because
I see what you're going.
all of us have a masculine and a feminine energetic within us. You can, if you don't like those words, you could use positive and negative, right?
Oh, interesting.
Those are the energies that create the universe that we're in. They're ubiquitous through everything in nature.
It's polarity.
It's polarity.
Yes.
Right? And so I find for men to be able to find that free, fluid, expressive movement, that's all about embodying the feminine.
Yes, it is.
And that's healing a huge part of what needs to be healed in order to become an integrated being.
Oh, yes. And, yes. Oh my God. There's so much to that. And most men, myself included, I'm assuming you as well because you grew up in Canada, the culture of masculinity here was funny.
I'm laughing because I'm sensing where you might be going with this.
Oh, I see. Yeah. You grow up in a certain culture. Men are shamed for dancing. They're shamed for their expression. They're shamed for having feelings. And we learn this from our fathers, from our culture. And it's just, you're a bitch, you're weak, you're a pussy, you're a vagina. These are words, you're a fag, gay. These are words that I used to use when I was, 11, 12 years old.
Totally.
And these are words that we kind of grew up with, and we learn to repress that part of ourselves intensely. Mm-hmm. And now coming back to what you were saying about to be a full integrated man, I agree, and that's why my work with men is primarily on the feminine side, which
of course, am I marketing to you motherfuckers with feminine? No. Fuck no. This is going to help you get a relationship, which it will, because if you're in a relationship not connected to your heart, you're not going to have a deep relationship. But what I heard the other day from this guy, Lauren Kren or something, who's on Instagram, Polarity guy, he was basically saying that the same thing as you. You have to be connected to your feminine as a man to be fully integrated. But, he said, there was a but, he said, to be fully alive at the deepest level, you're embodying your masculine. But you need to have the connection to your feminine. You need to be able to go there. You need to be, you have to reckon with it. You have to be connected to it. But he said to be alive at the deepest level is to be connected, expressing your masculine, is what he said. What's your thought on that general idea? And I might honestly be straying away from his deep point, but it's still a question I'm curious about.
I think I would need to sit with it more before I gave a full answer. I would say that just superficially, I think I can see his point in saying that in this body, I am a biological male.
Yes.
And so that is going to be my deepest form of expression, is always going to be expressed as a male, but to have that feminine integration of that energy and to be able to be expressive, to be intuitive, to be in tune with that part of myself is absolutely imperative in order to be at my full expression in life. But I think I see where he's going with that point, and that I'm always going to be a man.
Yes.
Right. I'm a biological man. And
yes.
So, we touched on this last night at the workshop that we did, and it's around this idea also of the sacred wound, which is a wound that's never healed. Right, and it's just kind of the experience of being a human is kind of a fucked up experience.
Yes,
right?
yes.
And there's aspects of that experience that may never be fully reconciled.
Yes.
And that's okay.
Yes.
Right, and I kind of think about that masculinity aspect as being part of that, where it's kind of like maybe we never achieve full integration. Right, it's like we're always going to be driven maybe more towards one side than the other side, and that's okay. Right, and it's like we're not striving for perfection.
Yes.
We're just we're doing our best with what we've got, and I think that I can see where he's coming from on that.
Yeah, I really want to see a world where men are connected to their hearts. That's kind of like my overarching what I'm after.
Yeah.
Is that's the impact I want to make. It's where I come from. It's what I want to do. And I'm just imagining, like, look at the people that are in power. Imagine if they were connected to their heart. There's more than enough. I heard this from Louise Hay. It really touched me. She's like, there's more than enough money for everyone to be fed and have clean water. So it's not a lack of money. It's a lack of love. And that's when I realized kind of more what was happening in the world. And I just said, if more men were, if it was just normal for dudes to talk like we're talking, you and I could go deep if we wanted to. We could share what we feel. We could be held in that. We could feel safe to express that, because you and I have done some of this work. But there's so many men that feel afraid to express vulnerability, like genuinely fear response in the body to express vulnerability, and it's paralyzing them to even deal with their emotions, even if they want to, let alone express it to somebody else. So what do you have to say on that? Maybe some empowerment, some advice for how to start making that connection with their emotional body and learn that it's okay, and why maybe it's helpful to give them a reason to do it.
Well, I think, again, to me, it comes back to that practice of awareness. Everything comes back to awareness. And if we want to create any kind of a change in our life, then awareness is the prerequisite to change. And so becoming aware of our emotional landscape is super important in order to be able to start to shift that landscape. Why would we want to do that? Well, because that's the only way that we're going to ever reach our full potential. And to be able to live from our heart is when we access infinite potential, right? This is where the power of creation lies. And so if we want to tap into that and we want to shift out of the doing and the striving and the scratching and the hustling and the
Yes.
grinding, and we
Yes.
want to learn how to attract. The feminine energy is the one of attraction, right? So if men are wondering or about why you would want to be more feminine, it's because you want to attract.
Right.
An egg sits there and waits for all the little sperm to come to it. It doesn't run around swimming around looking for sperm,
Right.
right? It just sits there,
Yeah.
right? And if we want to do more attraction in our life, then we'll do more of that work of vulnerability, of tapping into the emotions, of getting to know that internal landscape and being able to learn how to express that. That's been like one of the greatest challenges of my life, is
Yes.
learning how to express. When I grew up, my expression was not wanted,
Yes.
right? And it was not welcome.
Mm-hmm.
And so I learned to shut that down. I learned to shut up.
Yes.
I learned to not say anything,
Yes.
right? So being able to express is overcoming a deep, innate fear of mine that I will be hurt for expressing, right? I will be severely punished for my expression. So working through that is working through some deep layers of fear.
Yes.
Right? And so it's challenging work. But as a result of doing that work, then we achieve liberation. Like, we're liberated. Our expression is liberated.
Yeah.
We're free to be who we came here to be.
Yes.
And more than attracting a partner, more than
Yes.
attracting money,
Yes.
it's like the reward of being who you came here to be is the greatest gift that you could ever receive.
Yeah. Yeah. It doesn't compare to any of that other superficial shit.
No.
Even if you're so in love with your partner, I'm telling you, this is like, it's a high, like, it's insane. It's insane. And I can see why. I want to ask you one more question before we wrap up here.
Mm-hmm.
I can see why there's so much fear for someone like you, and for me that expression was not welcome either. It was shut down, especially creativity. And I always had this belief that I'm not creative, that I'm not good at, but then I started getting reflections from other people saying, no, you're creating, like look at that, like you're actually very creative. And I realized I am creative, and I just had to, but facing that creativity, learning to express, I'm going against like what my body perceives as like death, basically, at the deepest level there. And so it makes sense why a lot of men don't want to go there, because their fathers told them shut the fuck up. They lost love. They might have been physically abused, verbally abused whenever they expressed, and so of course your nervous system is just basically thinks that expression equals death, more or less. And so, and that's why at the beginning of our conversation I talked about, or this is actually before we started recording, but when I went out and started public speaking, I remember thinking to myself, I was like, and dancing. Dancing was a big one for me. I was like, why am I so... I was in my room by myself. I was like, why am I so afraid to move my arms and legs? I'm like, why am I... It just didn't... I'm like, what the fuck's going on? And then I, later I realized what it was, but that's what initially pushed me out, was like, I shouldn't be fucking afraid to move my arms and legs and just move. Why am I deathly afraid of this? And so, but it goes so deep, because when you get shut down for it by your caregiver, who basically is responsible for your living or dying, more or less, they have the power of that. Then these sorts of things can happen. So my last question is actually a bit of a curveball, but I wanted to touch on the topic of sexuality. And I wanted to touch on that because I've actually found tapping into my heart has helped my sex life become 1,000 times better. And it's actually, funny enough, this is it helped me kind of tap into like a bit of like my pervert 12-year-old self when I was first learning about sexuality and like had all these new desires, and it felt really good to be connected to that 12-year-old. And that might sound weird to some, but for me it felt like really connecting and good. And on the other side, it just helped me be in my body. It helped me feel the woman that I'm with. And that's, incredible for a number of reasons. But because you're in a conscious relationship, you're a great guy to ask about this, who's doing this work. What can you educate us on sexuality, the connection to our hearts, and how we can experience more pleasure, perhaps?
Whew, that's a big
Take
one.
it wherever you want it, because there's a lot there, yeah.
Yeah, that's been a huge healing piece in the relationship that I'm in right now, is being able to really be in a partnership where we can circulate that energy. And for me, what I really focus on is opening my heart to the love that my woman wants to give me.
Yeah.
Right? Because I've shut that off my whole life.
Yes.
Right? My heart has been shut down. I've been totally disconnected again from that receiving aspect of myself. And so in being able to open my heart, it's opened up, for lack of a better way of saying it, eternity, right? Like it's everything. It's like this infinite potential. And so really when we're engaged in intimacy, what I will focus on is just opening my heart space. I will focus on filling my partner with light, and that comes out of my genitals, right? And so it's this cycle of energy that's flowing through us. And I think in a partnership, I think that that's one of the most powerful pieces that we can do, is bring our partners into who they are in the light. Because it's so easy, just like those people on the street, addicts, whoever, to hold those people in darkness, right? And we do that to our loved ones as well. Oh, my partner never gets this right. My partner's always like this.
Yes.
So can we flip that around and hold our partner in light, in their true potential? Right? And in an intimate act, to bring that light into our intimacy, it helps to bring that innocence back into our intimacy, because our sexuality has been, in my opinion, so distorted, right? And so perverted.
Yes.
And the act of simple intimacy, again, it's the best thing ever, is just to be fully connected with a partner. And I don't think that we need to go down all these roads of different sexual interests so much as just to be with one person and fully be with them. And then it's like, it's kind of like that consumerist mentality where it's like we're striving, we're looking for all these things outside of ourselves.
Right.
Whereas if we could just be ourselves, then we have everything we need.
Right.
Again, in intimacy or with a partner, is kind of like just being able to be there, be fully present. That's the greatest gift in the world.
Yeah.
We don't need anything else. We don't need to get all crazy and wild.
Right.
Maybe you do. Maybe you want to. Maybe that's your thing. That's great.
Yes, yes.
But for me, I've been crazy. I've been wild. I've done all the things.
Yeah.
For me to be with my partner and just to be in that energetic, to open my heart, is all I feel like I could ever want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel you, bro. You made me cry over here, dude. That's beautiful. Seriously, man. It's
well, and to feel the love of your partner, regardless of what gender that partner is, whether, regardless of sexuality, it doesn't matter, but to open our hearts to love. That's the most important thing as a man, is to be able to, or a woman, is to be able to open up.
As a human, yeah.
And to receive love, because it's everywhere.
Yeah.
I have a teacher, and he has a quote, and I'll paraphrase, but it's something like, God's grace is falling around you all day, every day. It's everywhere. And you're walking around with your umbrella. So get rid of your fucking umbrella. And let that grace shower over you. Because it's everywhere. It's infinite. And we need to open up to it and recognize that it's there and open ourselves to receive it.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I'm going to leave it at that, because you said it so eloquently there. I couldn't agree more. And sexuality is not just rubbing genitals. It can be so much more.
Absolutely.
It can be so much more than just what we've kind of been taught. So we're going to end the show there. Thank you so much for your time. It's been a pleasure. I appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
And where can people find you if they'd like to get in touch with your work, some of your experiences of breathing? And I'm not sure if you do coaching as well, like one-on-one
do
coaching?
some coaching.
Do
I
some
don't
coaching?
do a ton of one-on-one work.
No, it's not one-on-one.
I work with a few people at any one time because it's fun. But
Yeah.
I prefer group
Yes.
workshops, retreats,
Yes. So
online courses, stuff like that. People can go find everything at Breath Army. breatharmy.com,
breatharmy.com.
Breath Army Instagram, Breath Army Facebook, Breath Army everywhere.
Breath Army, motherfucker. All right. Thank you for coming on the show. I really
Thanks
appreciate
for having me.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
It's great to be here.
Ow! Great job. You made it to the end of the podcast. If you're one of the ones that made it to the end, great job. And invitation to ask yourself the question, what is one thing I can really take, apply, use in my life that will help, bring more joy to myself and others, that will help me get where I want to go? Pick one thing that you can apply and perhaps even schedule it in your calendar. One of the keys I've learned to really making my education time, like listening to a podcast, worth it, is putting something in my calendar to apply it, to integrate it. That's really where change takes place. It's not just from thinking or intellectualizing, it's from doing. And through the doing, you're gonna learn even more. So thank you so much for your time and attention. I hope this podcast was really valuable for you. And I hope you're having an amazing day. And until next time, my friends, live a life that is true to you. See you.